It's Sunday, June 21, 2026. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism on Substack at The Anthony Davis. Our guest today is an ordained minister and former NASA rocket scientist, husband and father, and now the Democratic nominee for Congress in Arkansas's 2nd Congressional District after winning the primary in a landslide with 92% of the vote. Dr. Chris Jones, welcome to the Weekend Show.
Hey, thanks for having me, my friend.
And I should wish you a happy Father's Day, of course.
Happy Father's Day to you as well.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I'm a girl dad of 3.
Well, congratulations. That's a lot of work. I know that just with 2. Yeah. I also want to congratulate you on your primary victory. What was because it was a bit of a landslide, wasn't it? So what was your immediate reaction when you realized you'd secured the Democratic nomination?
Let's get to work. I mean, we won the primary with 93% of the Democratic vote. And then we got within 1,000 votes of French Hill. And he actually lost ground. So for me, it was a sign that we are united and we are ready. Let's get to work.
In addition to Father's Day, Friday was Juneteenth.
Yeah.
We know that Donald Trump is trying to silence any commemoration or even celebration of Black history, removing monuments and information from museums and exhibits and that stuff. How for you, especially in Arkansas, how is Juneteenth considered? And is the messaging still powerful?
The messaging is very powerful. Juneteenth is both a celebration and a reminder. We have had activities and events and celebrations all weekend. It's a reminder both of the progress of our country and the peril of our country. Both of those are juxtaposed together, and Juneteenth is a unique moment to say, yes, we have made progress, but yes, there's so much further to go. What I enjoy about it is that it does give us a minute to pause and to show a sense of unity that in the stress of everyday life we don't always get to.
So listen, let's talk about Arkansas politics, because it is, you are, and I've described guests I've had over the last few weeks as disruptors. Yeah. And I actually like that phrase. It's, it's like kind of John Lewis' Good Trouble. It's like coming in and actually wanting to change the status quo and kind of rewrite the narrative for your district and for your state. Just tell me a little bit about, because you're local, right? So tell me about your background and how important this is for you, personally.
Yeah, well, I'm a 7th generation Arkansan, so my family has been in the state for over 200 years. And when I think about my life's journey, going to Morehouse and getting 2 degrees, working at NASA, going to MIT and getting 3 degrees. Being an ordained minister, so on and so forth, none of that happens without the foundation that I got here. So for me, it was always about giving back to the place that gave so much to me and making sure that other youth, other children, other future generations had even more opportunities than I had growing up. So this is a place that I remember. You see, I grew up in the sort of Bill Clinton, Arkansas days. Where Democrats were a stronghold and people cared about community and cared about each other and showed up for each other. Now, the folks here still care, but the leadership has changed. And so this is a disruption to the leadership and the narrative that says we have to be divided.
Just tell me about when that changed, that Democratic stronghold changed in Arkansas, and why do you think it shifted?
Yeah. So it happened, what I would argue wasn't that long ago, but feels like eons ago.
Because so much has happened.
Because so much has happened since then. And really the Republicans, to their credit, were on the ground, doing the work, trying to break the Democratic supermajority. And then when President Obama got elected, And it's ironic that we're celebrating the opening of his center, his presidential center, this weekend. But when he got elected, the tide turned. That's when the Tea Party took shape, and it grew. And Tom Cotton, who became congressman and then senator, was one of the leading figures in the Tea Party movement. That shift really ignited an undercurrent of racism that had been hiding and had not had power. And then from there, really in the 2008, 2010, 2012, everything totally shifted from Democratic control at the federal level and state level to Republican control at the federal level and state level. So really, we're talking about 15 years max, which actually isn't that long ago, but it feels like eons.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we presume that in any kind of normal and civilized society, that if a black president is elected, that the trajectory of positivity and integration would only grow. And actually, as you just described, what it did is it made a lot of kind of white racists really angry. And it fueled their desire to really shake things up. And certainly me in Europe was quite naive to what was going on. I mean, I thought that, finally, we had a female prime minister in 1979. It's like people forget, right? So, but
can I comment on that?
Yeah.
Though? So, actually, there are a lot of folks who were not at all surprised by this,
right?
Because if you look historically, intuitively you would think, once you hit a certain plateau of progress,
yes,
you don't go backwards. In this country, quite the opposite has happened. When slavery was ended, the response was Reconstruction. Voting was at levels of 80-90% among the black population. There were a record number of black electeds at the state, local, and federal level. And the response to that was Jim Crow. So we've seen it. And then the response to the civil rights movement was actually mass incarceration and some of the present day oppressive systems that we see right now. So this country, unfortunately, has a real history of showing some progress, and then folks come out of the woodworks and there's a retreat and you have to keep fighting, which is why John Lewis said, get into some good trouble and stay into some good trouble, because, it won't stop.
For people who this affects and who care, there is a lot of work still to be done. And we're seeing, because of the desecration of Washington, D.C. with Donald Trump and the gutting of the Voting Rights Act that the Supreme Court's been all over, and the gerrymandering and everything else that's going on.
Yep.
There is clearly a desire to kind of return to Jim Crow era on behalf of the president and all of his surrogates in these various states. When we talk about John Lewis and we talk about the effort that went in to the civil rights movement, it must be very hard for people who were involved in that and still are involved in that to see such a blatant and overt level of racism coming out of the White House.
Yeah. It is. It is. And it's hard in the sense that a lot of folks feel like we fought the fight and made the progress,
right?
And taught the lessons, and the lessons weren't learned. Again, I'll go back to saying, however, though, that a lot of people understand that is what this country is about in many respects. I am a seventh generation Arkansan, like I said. So that means my family was here before Arkansas was a state, which also means that I can trace my family back to the slave plantation. And yet, even in spite of that, and maybe even because of that in our progress, I love this country and this state more than anyone, or as much as anyone else.
Right.
So part of it is understanding that there are the pieces of the country that we love and we want to lift up, and there are the pieces of the country that we're like, this isn't right. We're not living up to our ideals. And that's the part that I want to fix.
How did you feel when you saw the venue of Martin Luther King Jr. giving his historic speeches on civil rights being used for UFC fight, gladiator style, with these kind of aggressive alpha males, toxic masculine creatures coming down the steps and heading into the ring? I mean, how did that affect you?
Honestly, it was mixed.
Right.
There's this deep disappointment that we would lift up the worst of ourselves, our worst angels, and that we would put that on display using our tax dollars to put it on display.
Yeah,
in a place that really is sacred ground, not holy ground, but sacred ground.
Right.
That's the piece that disturbs me deeply. And at the same time, there's the historian in me that also, again, has to recognize that we should not be surprised. When you can have barbecues and festivals while a human being is hanging from a tree.
Yeah.
When we can reach those depths, that's when you say, hey, look, but the country was founded in a way to put guardrails around those depths, right? The founders knew 250 years ago, they knew that we could have a mad king sitting on the quote unquote throne of the White House. That's why they had Congress. Congress was supposed to put a check on that so that we would not end up in a place where we are now, really.
But the guardrails have failed.
Guardrails have failed.
And really, we've come so far from that I have a dream speech, right?
So far.
Yeah.
And, it's, the other thing I'll add, I went to Morehouse. And so we are steeped in the history of not only what was said in the I Have a Dream speech, but the full context around it, what led up to it, how communities had to communicate, what the struggles they were fighting against, how there were so many efforts to derail it. So all of that context, and yet they fought, and yet they pressed, and yet they continued. It is to me an encouragement that, look, they are working hard to gerrymander. Congress, particularly the House congressional leaders, are feckless and they're silent, and yet we have to continue and press on.
So let's talk about election interference, because this is going to be something that you will probably face, and I'm sure that you're already planning for this. And we've heard it from Trump with the California primaries, saying that it was rigged because it didn't go the way of his candidate, who was another reality TV show star. Star I use in the loosest sense.
Loosely.
But it is a sign, and a lot of the people who have expertise in the kind of fascist aspect of this recognize that Trump's sowing the seeds of this use of language about the system being rigged, and only if he loses, of course. If he wins, then
it's perfect.
Fine.
Everything was it was perfect,
right? But that is having ramifications in all the states, and many states now, and legislators are planning for this, and they're trying to kind of lock things down so that the interference can't happen. Trump only a few weeks ago was saying that he wanted to take over elections, and the federal government should be running the elections and trying to seize voter rolls as well.
But what happened to states' rights?
Yeah, exactly. So what's happening in your state, and what preparations are you doing for a war, effectively, over votes?
Yeah, so it's interesting. If I stay at an elevated level for a second, I think every state is preparing at the state level. Right. Some are preparing as opposition to this war that Trump has declared and that he's planting the messaging seeds for. Yeah. Others are preparing to support. We are in a state that's led by Trump's former mouthpiece. She willingly turned over our voting records to the federal government. So there is not only is there no pushback in some states, but there are a direct working with them. And by the way, she was at the UFC fight on this past week to celebrate. To me, it's disgusting. Now, having said that, if we drill deeper, there are folks on the ground, our campaign, other campaigns that are working to partner with lawyers to begin to watch what is happening, to begin to lay the groundwork to prepare for what's coming. Mark Elias with the Democracy Docket is certainly setting the standard and the stage to be ready.
He's saving America one legal case at a time.
One legal case at a time. Not all heroes wear capes.
Right.
So what I'm encouraging folks here in Arkansas and in this district, and I just last night talked to a group of lawyers. I'm encouraging them to lean in and get ready. Have young attorneys, law students, and get that we are preparing the teams to be ready for that fight.
The other thing Trump didn't understand about California is that it takes a week to count the votes. And the idea that, if you don't get a result on the day, then that must be cheating.
Well, does he not understand it? Or does he understand it and wants to intentionally confuse folks about it? Right?
Bingo. Yeah.
Because he knows that every state has a different voting process. But if he can confuse enough people that aren't, we took civics out of the classrooms.
Yeah.
And so now if he can just get you to believe that, well, maybe that blue state over there is doing something shady, because why shouldn't the votes be tallied the night of? Of course, that makes sense. That's what he's doing, I think. I think he understands. And I think it's a very intentional act and effort at messaging. And because if you can control the message, then you can control the mindsets.
What is the likely propaganda that is coming through for Arkansas? What are you hearing? How are they kind of laying the groundwork to try and mess with your election?
Yeah, I'm hearing sort of seeds of, well, we just need to make sure that only legal citizens vote. We make sure that only registered voters vote.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. And we just need to make sure that only the right people register to vote. There was a case here in Arkansas.
Did you say the right people or the white people? I missed.
Well, see.
Yeah.
That part.
Right.
I was going to tell one story, but I'll tell another real quickly.
Sure.
So I'm walking in my neighborhood, and I bumped into one of my neighbors who I did not know. He's a staunch Republican, but we have a mutual friend. And our mutual friend actually convinced him to not only take a look at me, but to actually start to support me. And so we were having a great conversation. And then all of a sudden we started talking about voting. And when we were talking about voting, he said, I actually think that only if you get no assistance from the government should you have the right to vote. And I pushed him a little bit and said, well, are you ultimately saying that, like they had in the past, that really only wealthy land-owning white men should be able to vote? And the look on his face was in part, I think it's not a bad idea. He knew enough not to say it. So that's the mentality of some people, not all.
Yeah.
Of some people, because they have been convinced that only a certain number of people can actually make the best decisions for all of us, versus all of us making the best decisions for all of us. So what we're seeing is seeds being planted that, well, these folks shouldn't vote, so let's make sure they don't. Or these folks, well, even if they have the right to vote, they're not going to make the best decisions. So let's make sure they aren't counted in the number of folks who vote.
Right. They're almost going to ask people to guess the number of marbles in a jar before they can vote.
And to recite the Constitution verbatim. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, and what I was going to say is that we had an organization, Get Loud Arkansas, that's been doing voter registration. They actually did digital signatures for voter registration, which allowed them to get more signatures, because now you don't have to have a wet signature, somebody actually signing.
Right.
Well, the Republicans took them to court. to actually the Republican legislature filed a bill to stop them from doing that. And then they went to court. Fortunately, the court is now allowing them to do it. It'll likely go up to the Supreme Court to say whether or not you can have a wet signature or a digital signature for voter registration. But they're doing everything they can to put a stopgap into people registering. And then the other thing that we're going to see, because we saw it some when I ran for governor, there you will see folks who will show up in big pickup trucks. Sometimes because we're open carry state, sometimes garnishing their weapon.
Intimidation.
Intimidation. And saying, I'm just here, make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
Sure you have the right to vote?
Yeah.
That is scaring people.
Yeah.
That's voter intimidation.
Because the line that Trump peddles is that the illegals, to coin a phrase, not one that I like,
right,
are voting, and there is zero evidence of this, and they've basically based their whole rhetoric on this idea that let us call people undocumented immigrants are voting. And as an immigrant, I should explain that if you are in the US, you will do everything you can to stay on the right side of the law, right? You'll assimilate, you'll pay your taxes, you'll work hard. You do not want to poke your head above the parapet unnecessarily.
Right.
And there's never any talk of that about how immigrants actually feel such a great sense of relief and joy that they've been given this opportunity to be in the US, that you're not going to break the law. And so, as you say, there is zero evidence of immigrants voting, and yet Trump and his surrogates are basing their entire policy on something that is blatantly untrue.
Absolutely. All of it. Here's what's, again, I go back to the messaging.
Yeah.
If they can convince someone, they win by dividing. They don't have enough numbers to actually win, but if they can divide, if I can convince one set of people that this other group is trying to cheat and steal something from you, and then if I can convince a subset of the other group that if you come out and exercise your right to vote, you may get picked up and put in a detention center.
Yeah.
So there are a whole lot of legal residents that actually have a right to vote and are registered to vote that are really questioning, if I go out, am I going to get snatched up and spend 2 weeks in a detention center? That's a real concern. It's what I need us to understand, and I know your listeners understand it, it is a critical part of their strategy. It's a part of the divide strategy and the intimidate strategy.
Yes. So you don't actually have to break the law in order to get picked up anymore, or even executed in the case of Alex Pretty and Renee Good.
Exactly.
Actually they're making the law up as they go along. You get in front of the car, or you protest, or you got to help somebody else. You are fair game. And I think that, as you say, has sent a message to people that is it worth the risk to go out when the mindset of these law enforcers is chaotic.
It's completely chaotic, and it's completely intentional.
Yeah.
Because again, if I can shave off enough, then I can win. If I can divide enough, then I can win. And again, the founders understood this. That's why they said the body closest to the people should be elected every 2 years so the people can decide, and they have the power to put a check on this madness. And it is not happening. There is no check on this madness. I mean, how is it that we cannot fund SNAP benefits to feed hungry children? How is it that we allow rural hospitals to close? And in my state, here in Arkansas, we have a higher rate of farm bankruptcies than any other state. We also have one of the highest rates of farmer suicides. And yet we can spend $2 billion a day, $80 billion bombing a place, and now give $300 billion to rebuild the place that we just bombed. The math doesn't add up.
Well, none of it adds up. I mean, the math is the least of our problems. But I also recognize. Well, let me ask you how.
Yeah, please.
How do local voters? How much interest do they take in what's happening in Washington, or in Iran, or in the Strait of Hormuz? Yeah. I mean, how much is that impacting them? Because, arguably, if you know what's just gone down, if you know that the US basically surrendered to Iran and signed off on a kind of faux peace treaty that is stacked in favor of the Iranians, they're celebrating, obviously.
Right.
And Trump's blaming J.D. Vance for it, and it's likely that the hostilities will begin again.
Yeah.
But how much of that kind of is being talked about on the ground? How is that going to sway people's votes? Because they don't want a warmonger as a president.
Right. What they voted for, if you put aside racism, sexism, and whatnot, which is hard to put aside.
All the isms, yeah.
All the isms. What they voted for was in the foreign wars, mm-hmm. and I'm an anti-war guy. Mm-hmm. They voted to put America first, so invest in this country first. Right. They voted for lower prices on day one.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think the Republicans have a two-step process, and they do these two steps, and what we do will determine how effective they are in the two steps. Step one is to convince people that they are not feeling pain. Oh, the gas prices, they're high for a little bit. They're going to go down. You're okay.
Yeah.
Or, oh, don't worry about, yes, we cut funding for rural hospitals, but you know what we're doing? We have a whole new fund. Now, what they don't tell you is that they cut $40 billion and they have an $80 million fund.
Right.
The math doesn't add up.
Yeah.
So if I can convince you that you're not actually feeling pain, that's step one. Now, we're in a world now where people are like, wait a minute, I am feeling pain. This war in Iran, I voted to end foreign wars. Now we're going over to a war in Iran. I voted for lower prices. Now my groceries are higher. My gas is higher. Housing is still higher. Healthcare is higher. Everything is higher. So they cannot convince people that the pain isn't there. Then they go to step two. Step two is, if you're feeling the pain, now I have to convince you that it's someone else's fault. It's Joe Biden. It's Obama. Yeah. It's the immigrants. We wouldn't have to do this if Obama hadn't put pallets of cash and sent it over to Iran. It was a horrible deal. I'm fixing it. So convince them that the pain doesn't exist. If that doesn't work, convince them that it's someone else's fault, which is why we have to pound the pavement and pound the messaging that these are policy decisions. It is not gravity. That's a law that you can't change.
Right.
Someone is making a vote, and that vote is what's leading to your pain. Or someone is silent. Mm-hmm. And instead of telling the president, no, we cannot do tariffs on a whim just because you wake up in the middle of the night and you're offended by someone. Congress is supposed to be that check. They're not doing it. We have to remind people that this Congress is not doing it.
Mamdani in New York is proof that if you have a good idea, you can just get on with it.
Just get on with it.
And that, for years, people have been told that there's not enough money or it's impossible. But if you have the right person in the hot seat with the intent, then of course it can be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the reverse is true as well, right? So we look, as much as I hate to say it, we look at the president, and there are a lot of things that we said could never be done. Yeah. Self-enrichment from the White House, where you're giving no bid contracts to your children, you're putting billions of dollars aside for your own control. You're investing in companies before you make an administrative policy decision about those companies. We thought, that couldn't happen. Well, he's proving that it can. And in Mamdani's case, it's like he's doing things to actually help people. and to help the masses that they said couldn't be done. In Trump's case, he's doing things to enrich himself. Regardless, they said, you know what? The reality that exists today is not the reality that is going to continue because I'm going to change it. And I do think that we need more leaders in place, including in the Democratic Party, who say that the reality that exists today is not the reality that has to be. Because they'll look at a state like mine and say, oh, it's Republican, it'll never change. Mind you, it's only been less than 15 years that it's been Republican. But they'll say it can't change, and I'm saying no. We can make the change, which is by the way why currently we're 3 points up in the polls.
What are you telling people on the ground and in District 2 that you are bringing to the table that will bring about this change, that will reduce the gas prices, that will help people with the cost of living? How are you communicating that message? Because I'm sure there are other Democrats who need to, get some guidance, because the messaging is inconsistent. And as you alluded to earlier, Republicans are kind of better at organizing when it comes to the messaging.
Yeah. It's funny because while I hear you, I do think that it's okay for the message to show up in different ways, in different places.
Right.
Right. I've lived in Atlanta. I've lived in Boston. I've lived in Maryland. The message shows up in different places. Now, the overarching umbrella is the same. For me, it's affordability and accountability for all, AAA, affordability and accountability for all. And I think that's the case for a lot of Democrats. For Mamdani, it was also affordability.
Yeah.
So there's some high level consistency, but I think it's okay for it to be different. And why does that matter? Because in Arkansas, folks want to know, well, what are you going to do to help farmers? Mm-hmm. And, day one, it's stop these random chaotic tariffs for folks in Little Rock who are facing a housing crunch. It's like, what are you going to do about housing? Well, it's making sure that, number one, we're the only state in the union that doesn't have something called an implied writ of habitability, which basically means you have to have minimum standards. Right? So I can rent you an apartment, and there could be a hole in the floor, rats running around, missing pipes, and nothing. It's fine. I can still rent it to you. So day one, why not change that? If every other state does it, let's pass a federal law that requires it across the board. Now you raise the quality of housing for folks. So it really depends on the area you're in, and those are the messages, and it's working. Because people are saying, wait a minute, I can't afford anything. So let's stop the tariffs. Let's stop sending money overseas. And folks are not being held accountable for the madness. People, surprisingly, Republicans included, are upset at the fact that this guy will destroy the East Wing and build a bunker, claim that somebody else is paying for it, but now take my tax dollars from it. They are pissed, if I can use that word, at the fact that he sues himself for $10 billion, settles for $2 billion, and calls that a deal.
Yeah.
And it's all our tax dollars.
Yeah.
So the message I think that is consistent, though, is going back to, you're feeling pain, and the pain you're feeling is their fault. That, to me, I think is consistent. But depending on where you go, how it shows up is different.
But is it enough to make staunch Republicans vote for a Democrat? Because it's quite a long walk.
It's quite a stretch
to cross the aisle. Are they more likely to just not vote? I mean, this is the concern, isn't it?
I think it's a combination. I think there are some that are more likely to not vote. What I have found pretty consistently in my campaign and other campaigns here in Arkansas, though, is that when you show up and engage with them authentically, right? Not coming in saying you're stupid, you're bad, you're whatever. Like, look, let's talk about what's happening right now. Right now, you can't afford fertilizer. Right now. Right now, diesel's over $5 right now. Right now, you're about to lose your health care, and you know that you have a child that has a disability and a grandparent that has a disability. So when you show up and engage in that way, talking about everything from data centers to prisons. It really resonates with people. Now, here's the difference. We're not asking people to become Democrats. Like that is a bridge too far.
Yeah, well, but this is very interesting what you're about to say. And I hope you're going to say what I think you're going to say. Because there is a difference between joining a party, campaigning for them, changing your whole mindset, and just putting a cross in a box.
That's it. Just check the box. Ask yourself the question: how has your life improved? In my case, over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And to a person, I haven't had anyone. Now, in all fairness, I have not asked that question of the handful of billionaires we have here, or the bankers in the elite. I have not asked them that question. Maybe they have a different answer.
Yeah.
But the average person on the street that I talk to every day, whether I'm in church or the grocery store, and I ask them, how has your life improved over the last 10 years? They don't have an answer. So I'm not asking you to become a Democrat. I'm asking you to vote for change that will actually relieve the pain you're feeling. And folks, you know what? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
The other group, I'll say, it's interesting. We often talk a lot about how do we persuade MAGA to come over to our side? How do we persuade moderate Republicans? Honestly, I think some of the MAGA votes will just not vote. I think some of the Republicans, but here's the bigger group, particularly in Arkansas. The larger category of people, our largest block is actually non-voters. Folks who just said, I'm registered, but I'm gonna sit on the couch.
Right.
And that to me is where the real work is, to convince them that you not voting is actually hurting everyone. And I told a story last night at an event. And it was really illustrative of how you respond when somebody says, well, my vote doesn't matter. What I said was that you're on a bus. There are 9 people on the bus. 3 people vote to drive the bus off the cliff. 2 people vote to go get ice cream. 4 people don't vote at all. Everybody dies. So when those 4 don't vote, everyone dies. But if we can get them to vote for ice cream, it changes everything.
Well, you're giving people something. I mean, the kind of transactional nature of a vote, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
And what are we going to do for you?
Yeah.
You give us your vote. What are we going to give you in return?
Yeah.
And I really hope that National Democrats follow your example by talking about the fact that this vote, particularly in November, in these midterms, is a vote to change the course of American history. It's not just voting as usual. I mean, I was a little perturbed by the primaries, to be honest. I found across the country that it did seem to be like voting as usual with regard to turnout. I was expecting there to be a kind of flood of people saying, okay, we need to take America back from the brink of fascism. And actually, the numbers didn't really suggest that people were panicking as much as you and I might be.
Well, in this district, it actually did.
Right.
We saw record turnout in the primary, and particularly in the largest county. I think it might have been 50-some% higher turnout than the previous midterm election primary.
That's great. Yeah.
So, but I do hear you, and I agree. The sort of groundswell of energy that one might expect wasn't necessarily there.
Yeah.
And I think there are real reasons for it. I think people are stressed because, do I take time off of work to vote when I can't make ends meet on the 27th of the month? I ran out of money. Mm-hmm. Do I go vote when there's a risk of me getting snatched up and when I'm at the polls and sent to a detention center? I'm confused because there's a primary election and then there's a runoff for the primary, and then this one's closed.
Complicated.
It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
But that means that it's incumbent upon us to remind people that the folks who are in position to write the rules over the next 3 to 5 years, because they've destroyed all kinds of institutions, like you name it. So they're going to have to rebuild.
All of them, as I said. Yeah.
All of them. You pick one, it's been destroyed.
Yeah.
But the people who write the rules, who write the structure in the next 3 years, that will set the foundation for the next 200 years. This is the moment.
It is the moment, yeah. And I hope, because obviously Trump is decomposing very publicly, and that is a sign, I hope, to people that this insanity, this lunacy, this aggression, this abuse, this kind of violent attitude to not just to immigrants, but even to Americans too, and women. Also America's place on the world stage, which has diminished, as now as an untrusted partner, and allies are working out how to operate and protect themselves without the United States.
That's right.
So it's whether or not that is enough and people notice, because we know that people live in their little media silos, and they're watching state regime media that calls itself Fox, and
oh my goodness,
there is a very different narrative if you're one of those people.
Yeah. It's extremely different. I mean, which is why we have to amplify the message.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't have to get too complicated. Here's what happened. Here's who's responsible, and here's how I would do things differently. And we have to amplify each other. We cannot be afraid to amplify each other, because again, the two things: one, convince you that you're not in pain, and two, convince that that's somebody else's fault. If we know that that's their game plan, then we should counter it immediately. And that's what I think. If we do that then people will start to realize, because at the end of the day, I don't think people care about what's happening overseas.
Yeah.
What they care about is that, look, I literally cannot save for retirement. There are seniors here that are saying, wait a minute, what is going to happen to my Social Security? That's what people are concerned about. And it doesn't mean that those bigger things don't matter. Look, I'm an urban planner. I'm a PhD in urban planning. So I'm all about those bigger things. And I understand that on a day-to-day basis, when I go to pick up my daughter from her volleyball practice and then pick up another one from play practice, and you look in the eyes of folks that are there also, they're just trying to figure out how to make sure that they have food on the table at the end of the month.
It's hard. I've said this a lot recently, that the US is hard.
It's hard. It's hard
to exist in, and for all of the PR and the marketing of the greatest country in the world and all of this stuff, the reality for so many is very different. Let's talk for a second about your opponent, Congressman Hill, because he is really the antithesis of everything we've been talking about, right?
Yes,
I mean, he very much represents that kind of white banking, financial, and then that's his argument. He's like, well, I'm a business guy and I'm a banking guy, and therefore, I should be trusted on the economy. But we should remind him and other Republicans that the debt has only ever ballooned under Republicans.
Yes.
And people get nothing for it. And it's Democrats that reduce the debt and the deficit when they come in. So I mean, he's been in for 10 years now?
Yeah, he's been in for 10. Yep.
How do people feel about him? I mean, you've got so much going for you, not least being an urban planner and a rocket scientist. I mean, that's good stuff to start with. And clearly you're very eloquent and very capable at communicating the message. Being a reverend probably helps that too, I assume. But he's not a great speaker. I mean, I've watched him, and he really is. He's very dull, and he talks about trickle-down economics like it's the new big thing. And as we know, that theory is completely flawed.
Proven false.
Proven false. So what's the deal with this guy?
Yeah. So he slid under the radar by being the banker.
Yeah.
By being a community banker. I'm the one that gave you a home loan.
Right.
He slid under the radar. What he'll do is, in September, he'll pull out an ad with Old Blue. Now, Old Blue is his truck. Oh, I just ride around in my truck. just like you.
Yeah.
And he'll show up for a photo op. And what it does is it makes some people forget his voting record.
Right.
Now, in this cycle, two things have changed. Number one, the president is doing all manner of chaos and evil and madness and grift and corruption.
Yeah.
And so the question is, are you speaking out against that corruption? And the answer is no, and people see that. And number two, he has an actual record where he voted to increase bank fees. He is the most powerful banker in Congress, the most powerful banker in Congress. And what he decides to do is vote to increase bank fees, cut Medicaid, cut SNAP benefits, cut support to military veterans. Here's the thing, and this resonates with Arkansans because we're an agricultural state. You can't take a garden or a tree or a plant and expect to water it from the top and for it to grow. We know that. You don't water from the top of the plant. It doesn't grow. You have to water from the root. You have to water the roots, and then it grows. So this notion that I can support the big banks and the billionaires.
Yeah.
And if I support them, it'll get down to the roots. We know that. So what I have to do is remind people, and they're like, oh, you know what? That's right. When I'm watering my garden, I have to get to the roots. When I'm in my farm, out in the field, I have to get to the roots, which means I have to invest in the roots. And he's not doing that. The most powerful banker in Congress. And when he has a chance to vote for the people, he doesn't do it.
Well, he also doesn't show up for town halls either. I heard he was doing them over the phone.
It was a recorded teletown hall. And we had people on ready to ask questions, and it couldn't happen. Meanwhile, since I announced in October, we've done about 14 town halls. We've done one in every county. And we're continuing. I just did one this week, and we're continuing to do town halls because the piece that people need, and that's why I go back to what I said. If you show up, people are yearning for someone who's actually going to listen to them and care about what their concerns are. Some of that is about their pocketbook. Some of that is about the policies, but I think more of that is about this idea that as a nation we're so divided that people want to be connected. And part of our healing process is to be connected. And that comes through listening.
I put it to you, and this is a new theory I'm peddling, so bear with me.
Okay.
That we're not actually divided. We are told that we are divided. Because when you meet people face to face, and I'm sure this happens to you all the time, and you have conversations, you find out that there is more that connects you than separates you.
100%.
Kamala Harris line. Didn't work out so well for her, but let's run. Let's run with it, right?
Yeah.
And actually, it's the propaganda that divides us.
Yeah.
And it's the state regime media that divides us. And that actually, when it comes to it, if someone was in a burning building, most people would run in and save the other person, no matter what their politics, their race, their religion. The humanity is there. Yeah. But it has almost been diluted or lost because this messaging has been so aggressive.
Yeah.
And that is what really divides people.
Look, I think your theory is right. I'm putting it in physics terms. There's signal and there's noise. Right? If you have an old radio, you tune in the radio, you got noise, you got to get close to the signal. Part of what we're experiencing is that the noise has been turned up so high that we cannot hear the signal that, wait a minute, we all just want our kids to have a better opportunity than we had. We all just want to spend some time with our friends and family. And like you said, if there's a building burning, most people are not going to ask to see your voter registration card.
Right.
Most people are not going to ask who you donated to. My wife's an emergency medicine physician, and she's also a combat veteran. So when she's in the ER, and she said this before, she has worked on people who have had swastikas tattooed on them. Doesn't matter. That's a human right in front of them.
Yeah.
And she wants to do her level best to bring them to a healthy position. I think most of us are like that. And to your point, again, unfortunately, the media, the messaging,
yes,
has amplified the noise so much that we lose the signal.
The other guy, Congressman French Hill, he doesn't speak this language, though, does he? Doesn't really talk in human terms.
No.
What is it about the kind of economics of America that makes people vote for characters like him, and indeed Donald Trump, thinking that, oh, well, he's a businessman and therefore he's gonna be good with the economy? I mean, it's not. I mean, Trump played a businessman on television, but that's kind of as far as it went, right?
Right.
So, but I do fear that this is often a default voting position for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And is that something that you feel is going to be harder to convince people of?
It is. It always has been, because these buzzwords, fiscally conservative.
Yeah.
Right. I wear my suit. I'm fiscally conservative. Yeah. Well, fiscally sending $2 billion a day to a war nobody asked for, that's not fiscally conservative.
Mm.
Spending $1 billion on a ballroom, that's not fiscally conservative. Giving a tax cut and not paying your bills, that's not fiscally conservative. So what we have to remind people of, the buzzwords are not it.
Yeah.
But he's going to use they use the buzzwords, and I'm pro this, I'm pro military, right? I'm pro, and I'll show up at a ceremony, and I'll show up, and it's funny. He recently did a tour of a National Guard facility that's in the district, and he had his fatigues on and the helmet. He looked kind of like Dukakis, but they'll do that, and yet they'll vote in a way that cuts funding to veterans.
Yes,
so that's what we have to remind people of, that like how they're voting. But you hit the nail on the head in that they can attach themselves to buzzwords.
Yeah.
And if you attach yourself to buzzwords, then people don't have time to process everything. It's like, oh, you're fiscally conservative. You're pro gun.
Yeah.
2A, Second Amendment. Well, I'm pro all the amendments.
He's also vehemently anti-abortion as well, and that's a massive thing in your state too.
He is.
And how do you tackle that? Because I mean, I always say to people that, pro-life is branding, nothing more.
Nothing more.
And that has been a very kind of clever use of language.
Yes.
I called it anti-abortion. They would call it pro-life. How do you take on that argument?
Yeah, well, a couple of ways. One, to reminding them of your point that pro-life is you need to look at the whole life, right? So how can you be pro-life when you cut funding to feed poor kids that are hungry? Yeah. And I'm an ordained minister, I'm a preacher's kid. When our scriptures tell us, out of the people that we should look out for, the hungry are top of the list. Kids are top of the list. And you're doing things to put them in horrible positions. That's not pro-life. So part of it is reminding people of this notion of pro-life. But again, I'll go back to it. They have a machine that can get their message out with efficiency that is unmatched.
Yes.
So we have to amplify ourselves.
It is. It's a vast network that they operate within, and it because the talking points are so narrow, because it's like four things, right? It's very easy to market that on the right and the far right, but Democrats, progressives, liberal-minded people,
24-point plans,
such a range of views, and also an ability to think critically. And speak on a much deeper level about the effects of these policies and why things need to change. Let me finally talk to you about racism in America, because this is still something that I grapple with as onlooker, and I recognize my privilege, but I also see that it is under this regime, it is dark days. Now, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Trump's mantra really is make America white again.
Yeah.
We're seeing white supremacists right across his cabinet. From Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller. I mean, these people really are the worst of them. And you cannot, I'm amazed that there isn't more of an effort to try and deal with those guys, get those guys out, because especially Miller, who is behind so much of this policy and foreign policy as well now. So how do Democrats tackle this issue? Because I recognize, and this might sound odd, but I'm going to say it out loud. When I interview a person of color, it gets fewer views than when I interview somebody with white skin. And it drives me freaking crazy because, that means that even a pro-democracy audience is biased in their habits.
Yep.
And that I think it's an area that never really gets discussed.
Yeah.
But it is just the reality of America, both in its history and in its present. So how do you start to take this stuff on?
It's a good question. And can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have been the whole time, so I might as well keep going, right?
No, I'm down.
I can't take it on.
Right.
In this moment. Right. In this moment, I have to be singularly focused on figuring out how to win.
Yeah.
When we win, then we can have conversations about taking that on. Me. Now, I think there are others who can begin to make that shift.
Yeah.
Right. So, some of your listeners who are in safe blue states, invest in this current red state and in this particular race so that we can win and then start to change the dialogue. Because an investment in Arkansas, it doesn't take much to flip a seat.
Yeah.
So that's me in my position right now. Now, I will say this though. The other thing I can do to help to shift some of that is to continue to show up. If I continue to show up, consistency,
yeah.
Consistency matters. But we're talking about a centuries old issue and challenge that's in the DNA of this country, and I would be naive to think that I am going to shift that in this particular election. Here's an example. This weekend, we are celebrating the opening of the Obama Presidential Center. I find it curious that the president chose Thursday and Friday to sign a memorandum of understanding about Iran on this weekend.
Yes.
So some of it is an intentional redirection, turning up the noise, turning down the signal. And I think it's folks like you who have to keep turning up the signal, keep amplifying it, because it's real. It's real. Last thing I'll say real quick is that it doesn't just happen as a function of the society and system we live in. It doesn't only happen as a function of that. After my election, after I ran for governor, there was a prominent journalist who I saw. I was at an event in DC, and they pulled me aside and they said, "Chris, I've been wanting to tell you this. Sarah, blacklisted you from the media during your election, so that media would not cover." I went to all 75 counties multiple times. I was having an event after event in all kinds of places. Sarah sneezed one day and all of a sudden the media surrounding her like, "Hey, let's talk about it." So some of it's a function of the system. Some of it's intentional, which is why we have to fight back intentionally, and why I'm so grateful that you give me a platform, and that you give folks who look like me a platform.
Yes. It's I understand what you say about how it's almost too much to take on in this moment, but the solution, and I think it's something importantly we should end on, is the importance of actually voting, because this is all hypothetical if people stay home, and how essential it is to make sure that you're registered, that you have ID if that's a requirement in your state, and that you go out of your way to actually make your journey to the polling place, or do your vote by mail or whatever it is. Because that is, as we said earlier, there is a fear that engagement, if everybody does, because I think national elections on average, fewer than 60% of people get involved.
Low 50s, mm-hmm.
Right. But the reality is that, and you've said this, like, it doesn't actually take that many more to flip all the seats. And Democrats really do need a clean sweep of both the House and the Senate.
Yeah, because just the House is not enough.
No.
It's
not against that
progress.
guy.
Yeah, not against that, because, we don't take the Senate. And within the first 3 to 6 months, 2 Supreme Court justices are going to retire.
Yes.
And he's going to appoint a 25-year-old fresh out of law school, or still in law school, and to sit on the court for decades. I play poker. And so in poker terms, I will see your bet and raise it, in the sense that in this moment, just going to vote ourselves is the floor, the baseline. In this moment, we have to take the responsibility of bringing some people with us who otherwise were not going to vote. And if everyone, we have 4.5 months to the election. If everyone said over the next 4.5 months, I'm going to find, like, I know I'm going to vote. I'm sure all of your listeners are going to vote, right? If everyone who's going to vote says, I'm going to find 3 people who were not going to vote, and I'm going to spend the next 4 months working with them, talking to them, convincing them to vote, and making a plan to get them to the polls, it's a game changer.
I wish you all the best of luck. I'm grateful for your time and for your energy. But for now, Dr. Chris Jones, thank you for joining The Weekend Show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism on Substack, The Anthony Davis. I'll come back next Sunday with a brand new special guest and more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.